Many of you have asked about Kindle Vella and whether it's a good idea, whether you should do it, how you should do it, and all that good stuff. And I've resisted doing videos on Kindle Vella for a long time. One, because it just hasn't been a priority for me. And two, because I've been taking a wait and see approach. Fortunately, my friend Jason Link at epicjason.com has dug into this topic extensively and has made himself an expert on it. And so I asked him to step in this week and share his thoughts around serialized fiction, how to do it, why you should consider doing it, and how to use something like Kindle Vella to grow your readership. Jason is a best-selling author, he's given a TED Talk, and he's taught thousands of students on his courses on Udemy. So we're going to be in good hands this week. Take it away, Jason.
In this lesson, we will be looking at what is serial fiction and how it can be good for your author platform. Serial fiction is a method of writing and publishing in which a story is broken down into parts, what we call episodes. And the episodes are delivered at regular intervals. So, for example, you could have an episode published once a week. You could have it as frequent as once a day. So with serial fiction, you don't necessarily have to have the entire story finished and written out. You can reveal as you write. You can publish as you finish an episode. Once an episode is finished, then you can publish it. Of course, you can choose to write out an entire story, break it up into episodes, and reveal those episodes one at a time for as long as you have episodes. Serial fiction has a long history. A lot of popular classics were released as serials in newspapers or literary magazines before they even became novels. Charles Dickens serialized a lot of his stories. He's probably the most famous for his serialization of his fiction. For example, A Tale of Two Cities was published in 31 weekly installments, and it was published in a literary publication called All the Year Round from April 1859 to November 1859. Along with A Tale of Two Cities, there are other classics that were released in serialized form before they became novels, such as The Count of Monte Cristo, Madame Bovary, Crime and Punishment, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, Treasure Island, War of the Worlds, Ulysses, and Then There Were None, In Cold Blood, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, and many others. So this has been going on for a long time, and it has worked for many authors. Today, there are services that provide authors the opportunity to publish their stories as serials. Services like Kindle Vella, which is the focus of this course, Wattpad, Radish, and even author blogs. And we'll look at these more in depth in a later lesson. So these services are out there, services like Kindle Vella. Let's look at why they might be a good fit for you as a writer. So first, let's compare serial fiction to a novel. A novelist might come out with a novel, let's say, once a year. Now, I know there are novelists that do more than one novel a year, like Stephen King seems to come out with 4 or 5 novels a year, and there are some novelists who will come out with a novel once every 3 years or 4 years. But let's say, for the sake of argument, for the sake of this example, there's a novelist who can come out with a novel once a year. So that's one piece of content this author delivers to their readers a year. One piece of content a year. And as I said, some novelists might be able to crank out 2 or 3, even 4 novels a year, but that's 2 to 4 pieces of content a year. Now that might sound like a lot, but let's compare this to the serial writer. The serial writer, if they deliver an episode a week, so they have a weekly episode, they will come out with about 52 pieces of content a year. Now granted, those pieces are shorter, but that's a higher frequency. The more frequent connection this serial writer has with their readers. And so they're not easily forgotten. The serial writer is not easily forgotten by their readers. They're continually on their readers' radar. So this builds rapport. Serial writing builds rapport and relationship with readers and fans. So if your readers have been consuming your content at a regular rate once a week, it's highly likely that when you come out with new content, they'll buy it. So if they've been buying your content for the last 15 weeks, it's a good chance that they'll buy it on week 16 and 17 and 18 and so on. So why? Because you're consistently investing in them. You're giving them content, and they in turn are invested in your work. That's why they'll frequently buy from you. Also, serial writers might have an easier time than novelists when it comes to acquiring new readers, when it comes to getting new readers or breaking through to readers who have never heard of them. Let's look at novels. Novels have sizable content, hundreds of pages. So when an author who has never heard of you sees that your book is 500 pages long, that's a big commitment to ask of the reader. Will you spend this time reading hundreds of pages that I've written? So that's a difficult ask. Compare this to serial fiction. Serial fiction, on the other hand, is bite-sized content. It's 600 to 5,000 words. And that's not a huge commitment. That's a small commitment. And so it's an easy ask. A stranger or a reader who's never heard of you might be more inclined to read a 600-word episode that you've written than a 600-page book that you've written. So you could potentially get more readers this way since you are asking for a smaller commitment that's easier to complete. So in turn, you as an author have to be committed in producing episodes on a consistent basis. If you can make that commitment, serial fiction might be a great fit for you. First, let's look at the readership. Generally speaking, young adult readers dominate the serial fiction market. Also, we have readers who consume fiction on their smartphones, who read on their smartphones. Now, I'm sure there are people who are outside this circle who are consuming serial fiction, but generally speaking, these are the kinds of people who are reading serial fiction. Just as serial fiction seems to attract certain readers, there's also certain genres that seem to dominate the serial fiction market, and those genres being romance, fantasy, and science fiction, especially young adult romance, fantasy, and science fiction. Again, this is just generally speaking. There are other genres in the serial fiction market, but they seem to have a more difficult time breaking into the upper crusts. These are the genres that seem to dominate the market. The serial fiction market also has a demand for high-frequency output of content on the authors. The authors need to continue to produce episodes. But this is tempered by the fact that each of these episodes are a low word count. We're talking like 600 to 5,000 words. Audiences and readers will be expecting authors to create weekly or even daily output of episodes. As I mentioned in a previous lesson, there are different services where authors can post and publish their serial fiction. Services such as Kindle Vella, which is the focus of this course, Wattpad, Radish, and an author's own personal website and blog. And we'll go over each of these to see their pros and cons. Let's start with Kindle Vella, since it is the focus of this course. We're going to dig into it more deeply on another lesson, but for now, let's just take a brief overview of what this service looks like. On Kindle Vella, anyone can submit a story. Anyone can create an author account on Amazon and start publishing stories and episodes on Kindle Vella. For the readers of Kindle Vella, the first 3 episodes are free, so when they encounter your story, they will have the first 3 episodes as sort of a sampling to decide whether or not they want to continue with your story, and read more episodes. If they do want to read more episodes, the readers will have to buy tokens to read those episodes. A percentage of token sales will become money for the author. If you have your story published on Kindle Vella and you would like to publish it elsewhere on another service, you're allowed to do that as long as that story on Kindle Vella is not free elsewhere. So you can have it on another service as long as the service doesn't supply that story for free to readers. Like Kindle Vella, Wattpad has it so that anyone can submit stories. Anyone can create an account on Wattpad and start submitting stories and publishing episodes to those stories. But unlike Kindle Vella, Most stories are completely free to readers. There are no free samples, there are no tokens. The entire story is free. Those are for most stories and most authors. There are a few, however, a few authors are granted star status, and those are the ones who make money. Now, the vast majority of authors on Wattpad have their stories completely free. There are a few with star status who make money, and they make their money through the paid stories program, which is a token system that is similar to Kindle Vella. And there's also Wattpad books, where Wattpad will reach out to authors with star status and say, hey, would you like us to publish your story as a book? And you can make money through the book sales. And also Wattpad Studios, where Wattpad will make movies based off of the stories from Wattpad. But those are granted to only those authors with star status. And again, the vast majority of authors do not have star status, so they are selling their stories for free. It's just for exposure. Radish is a little bit different than the other two services in that it has an application process for authors to join. So authors, and if they want their stories to be published, they first have to apply and see if they get in. And the application process, according to their website, lasts anywhere from 1 to 2 weeks. So once you get through that hurdle, then you can start publishing if they accept your application. And like Kindle Vella, or should I say, Kindle Vella is like Radish because Radish came first. The first 3 episodes are free of a story. Once you publish a story, and when readers encounter your story, they'll have those 3 episodes for free to sample whether or not they want to go on. And they have the token system as well. Readers have to buy tokens in order to continue on and reading the stories if they want to continue reading after the free sample. And again, a percentage of token sales means money for the author. And authors are allowed to publish their story elsewhere, but it's highly encouraged that they stick with Radish. It's not required, but it's highly encouraged. Authors can also choose to showcase their story, their serial fiction, on their blog or on their website. And this is where posts become episodes. You can write out a piece of your story on your blog, and boom, a post becomes an episode. And authors have a lot of freedom here. They have a choice on whether or not their stories are free or whether they're paid. There are certain plugins that you can put in on a website that can create paid content only for certain members on your website. So that's an option. Also, you also have no marketplace competition. When readers go to websites like Kindle Vella or Wattpad or Radish, they're going to type in the search, for example, they're going to type in vampire romance. And there could be hundreds of results for vampire romance. Now, if you wrote a vampire romance and you put it in this service, it's going to have to compete with all the other stories that have vampire romance. Not so on your own personal website or blog. It's your stories. That's it. That's when someone comes to your website, all they get are your stories, no competition. The trouble is, you are responsible for driving traffic to your website. And that's easier said than done. Whereas Kindle Vella and Wattpad and Radish, they have advertisements out there and they have reputation for being serial fiction websites. And so people, they already have traffic coming to their websites, huge amounts of traffic coming to their website. They don't have that problem. So this might be an option for authors with existing audience or a mailing list. If you have a big mailing list, all you have to do is mail your list and say, hey, I've come up with a new episode, check it out, and you'll have traffic coming into your website via your mailing list. Now, if you don't have a big audience and you post something on your blog, then not many people might read it. So there are disadvantages to the marketplace, the services, but they're already getting traffic coming their way. But if you do have traffic coming your way to your website and your blog might be a great place for where you can put your serial fiction. So there's a brief look at the serial fiction market. We looked at what kind of readers the serial fiction market attracts. We looked at what genres seem to dominate the serial fiction market, and we also looked at where you can post your serial fiction.
I would love to know what you think about Jason's thoughts on serial fiction. You know, it's interesting, and I'll give you a little bit of a history lesson here. So back in 2011, 2012-ish, there were a lot of self-published writers who were writing serial fiction on Amazon Kindle, or they were writing serial fiction pretty much everywhere, but it was most prominent on the Kindle. And there were a lot of authors who made a very good amount of money doing this. Johnny, Sean, and Dave at Sterling and Stone were classic examples of this. I think even Lindsay Buroker was writing serials at one point, and there were a lot of people that were doing it. But at that point, Amazon really didn't support writing serial fiction. It was kind of a pain in the neck to publish your work as a serial because you would have all these little episodes out, and then you would have the compilations of the episodes, and you really had to rely on your mailing list in order to be able to do this right. And so people just stopped doing it because Amazon never did anything to make it easier for people. And people begged Amazon. I remember people begging Amazon in like 2012, 2013, hey, do something about this. There's lots of people that want to do it, and it just never happened. And I think that's one of the reasons why Wattpad had so much success, particularly with younger people. But anyway, fast forward to 2021, here we are, Kindle Vella. Now Amazon's finally getting around to doing something about this when all those authors that were doing serials kind of moved on. And so now there's renewed interest in it. And that's kind of why I've been a little skeptical about this, But I do think that Jason makes some really good points in the video about serial fiction. And if we finally have a tool that will help us reach readers to do that, then I think it's a good idea, depending on whether it suits what you want to do as an author. And so if you want to learn more about Jason, he actually has a course on serial fiction. You can check him out at epicjason.com. As I said before, Jason is a best-selling author. He's given a TED Talk, and he has taught thousands and thousands of students on his courses on Udemy. So you'll be in good hands. Check him out at epicjason.com. Thanks for watching, and have a great day.
Perfect.